man, this is how our season goes. 2020 already rough. I gotta say. Before I say this, I gotta say this. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Yes, I'm a Marvel fan. Don't judge. And Robinson, gonna miss him. I know I never really grew up watching Robinson, but I've seen his highlights. He was not a bad Blazer. Someone in the Blazer family. In the Blazers' hearts. So, and the coach, of course. I totally forgot about his name, and I'm sorry, but man, already 2020 already a rough year. Well, will always be a rough year. Anyway, this is how the Blazers season ends here. Let's look at the stats. Gotta give Portland this game so much credit. They kept fighting. They kept battling with no Nazier Little, Gabriel, Zach Collins, Whiteside most of the time of this game. No Damian Lillard. This game would have been closer if Dame would have played. But sadly, that's how it ends. The Lakers, LeBron, AD. I knew LeBron was going to be LeBron. I just felt like Whiteside would have been the key weapon. And he didn't become the key weapon. And personally, I think Portland's going to move on with Whiteside. Overall, the Lakers played a better defensive way. They played better defensively. And yeah. So, I normally would say, what does this game taught us? Instead of that, what did the season taught us about the Portland Trail Blazers? That this season could have been better. What do I mean? They were not healthy the whole season. I mean, there was no other big man. When Zach went down, the Blazers basically were screwed. They had like a winning record. I think they started like 6-2. I could be wrong. I know it was starting off with a winning record. Zach Collins gets hurt. The Blazers are messed up. And it was not just because of the injuries. The injuries, I will say, are the biggest part, but not really the whole thing. A wire season collapse. They're the biggest. But that's not the only reason why. The bench was terrible. And also, Rodney Hood also got hurt and all that. The bench overall was terrible. You just look at last year's bench. Seth Curry, Rodney Hood, Enes Kanter, Zach Collins. I just remembering that bench last season. Anthony, Scal, Gary Trent Jr., Myers Leonard. Is it sad that I know that bench? Well, not really. It just tells you how much of a fan I am. And you just look at this bench now. You just look at the pair of them. The bench was a disappointment. Now, Gary Trent Jr., yes, in the bubble, he did show up. But count out the bubble part. Or add it, whatever you want. Overall, the bench of the Blazers was terrible. Anthony Simons did not become what Neil or the Blazers thought he would be. Yes, he had a few games, and yes, we can always bring how he had such a phenomenal game against the Kings in that epic comeback, 37 points. That's one game. You can't keep bringing that up. You just can't. I could bring up Greg Oden. Man, remember when he had like 33 points? What did he become? He became a bust. You don't bring up because that one player had that one big game, meaning he's going to be a big star or something. Now, Anthony is young. Yes, this is true. He's young. He's only 20 or 21. But still, he has proven to me that he is not ready to fill in the role as a second point guard, a backup point guard under Damian. Seth Curry is a great example of being a great backup point guard. Anthony just didn't really showed up. This is why I was hoping the Blazers would have signed Jeremy Lin in the last offseason. I was hoping for that. And not only just was it the injuries or the bench, but it's also the defense. Like, Portland was a top 10 defense last season. I believe they were ranked 6th or 9th. Even though that's not top 5, top 10 is still good. I mean, you had like Maurice Harkless, Al-Farouq Aminu, Yusuf Nurkic. That was your best defensive core right out there. And then also Ronnie Hood gets in a trade. And then your defense became better. And also, forgot to mention Jake Layman from last season. So you went from top 10 to, I believe, 28th or 29th. That's god-awful. That is awful. You would think Neil, the GM of the Portland Trailblazers, would do something about it. He did. He traded for Trevor Ariza. But the thing is, I never understood the Trevor Ariza part. I mean, don't get me wrong. Trevor Ariza, I felt like, did decent as a Blazer. You know, he didn't play in the bubble because, well, family reasons. It didn't want to get COVID. So we can respect that. But that was not enough. See, what's enough? You'd think that the Blazers would trade for, before this whole thing happened, they would have traded for a big man, like a Kevin Love or a Blake Griffin, an Andre Drummond, a Tristan Thompson, some package with some big men in there. They never did. So, and it's more than the big man. I get it. But still, though, you did not have a good enough defense this season. Not only that, you were terrible at assists. They were ranked dead last in assists. I can't remember the last time that happened. This team, Portland, being dead last in assists. I can't remember. I really don't. 20 years of being a Blazer fan, I don't even remember. This team could have been better if healthy. Yes, they would have been probably a top 5 seed, because I predicted in the beginning of the season, Portland versus Houston, first round, 4 versus 5. I believe I had them at 4, and I had them losing to the Lakers in 5 in the next round. I believe Portland would have won that series in 6. But this season, I already told you what was the downfall. Injuries, a bench, a defense. Those are the keys of why this season was a failure. Now, I know many people will be like, look, you're saying that because they played the Lakers. There's no shame. You're right, there is no shame losing to these Lakers because there's an Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But when you had so much hype, even requiring like Kent Bazemore in a trade, and trading away Evan Turner, trading Myers Leonard and Maurice Harkless for Hassan Whiteside, signing Anthony Tolliver, signing Pau Gasol, re-signing Rodney Hood, you think there would be a better season, right? Defensively, oh man, Kent, oh, he's a good defensive player. Rodney, ooh, a good defensive player. Whiteside, ooh, a good defensive player. No, not really. Kent didn't show up at all as a Blazer. And we already know where he got traded. I already don't need to mention it over. I don't have to mention it. And Tolliver, he went gone. Same with Pau Gasol. This season, like I said, I already said it. Defense, injuries, and bench. So what this is the offseason they need to do. Now I know I usually would say fire Stotts or Neil. I would normally say that. But I can't blame them this much of this season because of injuries. Now, if healthy, maybe the bench would be better and defensively would. just a tad bit. But the way how Damian and CJ play this season, bringing in Carmelo, that's another thing. Bringing in Carmelo Anthony, make him revive, I guess you could say. I wouldn't be stunned if he does not come back to Portland. I think he fits our system well. Honestly, the season could have been better. Like I said, it could have been better. But sadly, it didn't. So, what's now to the offseason? I'll make a video about what targets for the Portland Trailblazers do this offseason. Now, that would not mean they're going to get all these players. No, don't get me wrong. They're just suggestions. So, but what positions do I think personally? I'll tell you. A real backup point guard. A power forward that's a good 3-and-D player. Because I think this series was a perfect example of it. Not having anybody contain AD. I know you want to say, well, there was no Zach Collins, but still though, even Whiteside, who was third in blocks by the end of the season, top 5, whatever. A good blocker like him didn't even show up against Anthony Davis. Did I expect him to contain him completely? No. Well, he's contained them somehow. But, yeah. A power forward and a center who's not lazy, that does focus and does care. Because Whiteside, to me, coming off the bench, he didn't care. He didn't even care. He didn't even care. Even when he became a starting power forward, he didn't care. He only had one game over 10 points and then a double-double. That's it. Whiteside, I think, was also another problem of the Blazers. Look at the Miami Heat. Look how far they've gone. And look where seed they are. You look at the team like Miami Heat. We know what they are capable of now. And if, let's say somehow, I'm not saying it's going to happen, if the Miami Heat win the finals, Whiteside was the problem. It's already proven that he was the problem. But if the Mavs win the finals, my God. Not saying it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. So, center that does care. A power forward that is a 3-and-D power forward. A backup point guard. If Rodney Hood does come back, he's got a player option. And if you do re-sign Carmelo Anthony, you have Trevor Ariza for next season. I think the starting small forward would be Trevor Ariza. The backup, Carmelo Anthony, Rodney Hood as the backup shooting guard. Now, if you put Gary Trent Jr. as a backup point guard, go ahead. I don't have no problem with that. But just be safe, though. Get someone with better experience. Anyways, this is really sad to see this team go so like this after a huge upset in Game 1. I really was hoping for a 6 or 7 game series, but sadly, didn't get it. Sadly, this is how the season ends for the Portland Trailblazers. So, next season will be better. I can guarantee you that. We'll be a better team next season. Go Blazers till the end.